Welcome back to our discussion about research. And during our last meeting, we talked about a variety of different aspects of research, including the difference between a population and a sample. We talked about primary research and secondary research. We talked about qualitative research and quantitative research. We talked about different types of scales: nominal scale, ordinal scale, a Likert scale, for example. The 5-point Likert scale is a type of ordinal scale. And we said that Likert is the name of the famous researcher who created that scale. And an example is strongly agree, agree, undecided, disagree, and strongly disagree. But the descriptors can vary. It could be very satisfied, satisfied, undecided, dissatisfied, very dissatisfied. And that's why I've said previously that you need the questionnaire to be able to decipher the output. So you need to know, was it a 5-point scale? Was it a 7-point scale? Was it a 10-point scale? Because when you generate statistical outputs and you find out that the mean is 5, well, if it's 5 out of 5, then that means customer satisfaction is very high. If it's 5 out of 7, well, it's not the highest, but that's probably considered to be good at some organizations, but not the best. And if it's 5 out of 10, then we have a customer satisfaction issue. So we need to know the scale that was used. And that's why when I ask you to write the bullet points to summarize the outputs, we always include in the first bullet point the statement, on average, on a 5-point scale or a 7-point scale or a 10-point scale, customers indicated that they are satisfied or somewhat satisfied, for example. Questions about that? Okay. Course evaluations. So the college sends out many emails to you asking that you complete course evaluations because it's important. And if they're sending you emails asking you to complete course evaluations, you could believe that they're also sending faculty emails. And I want you to know that this is something that's important, that I'm asking you to do. I don't ask you to do anything, right? I don't ask anybody to wash my car or anything like that. But something that I am asking you to do is to complete the course evaluations for all your courses, because it is important. I've been in meetings, we're accredited by Middle States Commission on Higher Education. The School of Business is also accredited by AACSB, which is a prestigious accreditation and seal of quality for business schools. And as part of the accreditation process, which is what gives you a degree value, is that students evaluate the courses that they take. And I've been in meetings over the years where we've gotten feedback that not enough students are completing the evaluations. So we're continually striving to have students complete the evaluations and increase the percentage of responses, right? So it is an example of research. The college is conducting research, and they're conducting research about the courses that students have completed, and they want your feedback. And there's some nominal scale questions, there's some ordinal scale questions, and your responses are anonymous. They're completed on Web Central. This is the link for Web Central. Some that are new to the program, you should activate your Web Central account. Everybody has one, and there's all sorts of resources there and information about yourself, right? Your EMPL ID number, your college email address. So if you haven't ever accessed Web Central, you should. And I believe by the 1st of December, through December 15th, you'll be able to complete the course evaluations. Now, I know you want to complete a course evaluation for Coach B, but you need to complete the course evaluations for all your courses, right? And all your professors. Questions about that? So I wouldn't ask you to do this if it wasn't important. It's important. External evaluators look at this, and they're looking at the response rate. So when we do research, we want to know, we sent the survey to 10,000 people. What percentage of them completed the survey about soft drinks? So response rate is important. Questions about this? You can do it. Yes, you can. There's a discussion board question that I posted to Blackboard. It's in the Module 2, Lesson A. This is not a new issue, but it continues to be an issue. Many have expressed concern individually and as groups about beverages that have an excessive amount of sugar. And there's some evidence that suggests that that results in childhood obesity, and some develop diabetes as a result. For this discussion board, I want you to share your opinion, your perspective about this. This is also going to be part of your Cola Wars case study, but your response for that will be in more detail, and you'll be able to, for your report, be able to use outside sources. So certainly there's articles that you could find about this, but for the discussion board, what I want you to do is to just give your perspective. Indicate, your perspective about whether or not companies have a responsibility to sell products that don't cause obesity or diabetes. Now, some will say, well, let the buyer beware. Nobody's forcing you to buy Coke or Pepsi. Yeah, that's some of the arguments. But others say, well, a company is selling a product. They're making profit. Shouldn't they have some responsibility? Because if you consider other products, maybe obesity doesn't sound like a horrific issue, or diabetes is not what we would consider to be terminal in the short term. What about when you think about the sale of cigarettes? Now, there's significant amount of data that shows that there's a relationship. There's actually a causal relationship between smoking and people developing cancer. So understandably, there's a continuum that you might have in terms of the level of responsibility that a company would have. And maybe some of that is tied to what the impact is. So you might say, well, a company should have responsibility for a product that it sells if people use it, and once they use it in their kitchen, for example, it'll cause death. Well, I think it's reasonable to assume that we would all agree that that is unacceptable. But when you think about this, your response to this topic, think about it also in relation to other products that are sold. And if you think, well, you know, obesity is not that bad, and that's your part of your rationale, you say, well, if you said that people would die, then I would say, well, the company has a responsibility. But if somebody drinks a beverage that has excessive amounts of sugar and they don't die instantaneously, then I'm okay with that. So think that through. Make your initial post, right? This is, I'm sure you already have opinions about this topic. Make your initial post, and then which, you know, describes your perspective on this issue, and then 2 more posts on what other executives have posted to the discussion board. Either an insightful comment about what they posted, or a relevant and insightful question about something that they posted. So keep in mind that a discussion board is meant to facilitate a dialogue amongst ourselves, amongst each of you, with me, to share ideas and thoughts. Another aspect of this topic is I want you to indicate whether or not, using this matrix that you see on the screen there, whether or not selling beverages that are high in sugar are ethical or not ethical. Is it legal or illegal? And explain your perspective, why you think it's legal but unethical, for example. Questions about that? So your first post, which is a response to this question, this issue, should be a minimum of 50 words. Your additional post should be a minimum of 25 words. You don't need to do any research on this topic. You don't have to have read the Harvard case study regarding the cola wars to answer this this question. I want us to have a discussion about this. What are your thoughts, right? What do you think about this? So this is a short but relevant discussion board, especially in view of our case study analysis about the cola wars, about Pepsi and Coke. So the link is there. You could start at any time. It's available in Module B in the Lesson C folder. So when you go into our Blackboard, on the left-hand side in the blue panel, you'll see Module 2, and you'll see a folder for Lesson C and a folder for Lesson D.
And this has to be done in the discussion board, Professor?
That's right. Use the link in the discussion board, not the one for the introductions. There's a separate discussion board link that I created that is specifically for this topic.
Okay, so I'll find that. We'll find that link inside Module C, right? Like you said.
Module 2, yeah. We'll go to the Blackboard in a moment. It'll in a little bit. We'll go to the Blackboard. I'll show you exactly where it is.
Okay.
So you could do that, right? So try to make your initial post by this weekend, just addressing this issue as it relates to a company's responsibility and whether or not the sale of products with a lot of sugar is ethical or legal. And then by Tuesday, by Tuesday, right, make your remaining 2 posts. Now, this is, I want us to collaborate on this, share thoughts, share ideas, share opinions. And this is gonna give you a jump start on this topic, which is also gonna be included in your report. But in the report, you'll explain in more detail your opinion about this. And in the report, you'll be able to use and, of course, provide an in-text citation from sources that you reviewed as it relates to this, right? There's a lot of articles that have been written about this, and you could include at least one of them to support your perspective. But for this, let's just, what do you think, right? What is your opinion? Okay. So let's keep going. So that's something that'll be interesting for us to work on together. There's also something else that, of course, is very relevant to our course, is you're going to complete a survey about beverage consumption. And the consumption rate or usage rate of products is something that is typically researched in business. How often do you drink orange juice? How often do you drive to work? How often do you cook at home? How often do you eat out, right? So frequency is something that's typically researched in business. And the reason is because once you find out the demographics, right, of those that are heavy users and moderate users and light users, right, those that have a low consumption rate versus those that have a high consumption rate, then we could build a plan around that. Because when we find out that 27% consume orange juice only once a month, that's interesting. But we do that type of research in business because we're hoping to get information that's actionable. So it's not just, oh, well, that's interesting. That was, I'm glad we did that. I'm glad we conducted this research. No, the company might be glad they did this research, but now that we know that there is a large segment that consumes orange juice only once a month, now we want to figure out, how do we get that group, that segment, to drink orange juice more frequently? Does that make sense? That's why this type of research is done. So this is very realistic in terms of the type of data that we're collecting here, right, for our homework assignment. You're gonna get, last time we spoke about questionnaire design. We talked about avoiding double-barreled questions, not to have leading questions, not to have loaded questions. And again, we talked about the different types of scale. By completing this questionnaire, you're gonna get firsthand experience completing research, and you're also gonna become very familiar with research in action, right? You're going to be able to see what a questionnaire looks like that uses nominal scale, that uses ordinal scale, that uses interval scale. And I have throughout the questionnaire some notes that say things like, below is an example of a nominal scale. because I want you to, connect the dots. Oh, okay, right. This is another example of a nominal scale. And this is a ordinal scale. With that in mind, some of the statements, right, actually many of the statements that measure level of agreement. So in research, very often, one of the things that we're measuring is the level of agreement. And that's why we're focused on the top two box, because we're measuring the level of agreement. So strongly agree and agree. That's important. That's what we're typically testing for. But as we discussed last meeting, that could be 0. Because if the statement is customer satisfaction at McDonald's, my customer satisfaction experience at McDonald's was excellent. Indicate your level of agreement. Now, customers might indicate that they strongly disagree with that. So we need to know what the top two box is, but then also we want to know what was the largest percentage, which is the mode. So the top two box could be 0. It could be 12%. It could be 92%. But we're always going to first address what is the top two box, and then for survey data, and then look at, well, what was the largest percentage? Now, it might be strongly agree, but the reason why we check for that and have that as one of our bullet points is because the largest percentage might be strongly disagree. It might be 63% said they strongly disagree that their customer experience at McDonald's was excellent. Questions about that? So this is going to be a meaningful experience for you. It won't take a long time to complete this. We talked about scales. We talked about questionnaire design. Now this is an opportunity for the concept and the implementation of those concepts to come to life. Jamie.
The survey, is it due November 11 as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So this is a short assignment. This is not going to take you a long time, but give it some thought. You'll see that you'll be able to connect with many of the questions. And you'll also be able to see how the concepts we talked about last time come to life. These are illustrations of the different scales of questionnaire design. One of the things that starts off the questionnaire is an informed consent, which when research is conducted, you have to tell the participants that, what to expect. And what is the extent of their participation? Because, there was a time when research was conducted and they would have people drink stuff from a bottle with a blue liquid in it. And they said, drink this. And, as part of this study, and then their hair fell out, right? You're probably thinking that's what happened to me. Well, you might be onto something there, right? So there is that obligation when we do research, to do research in an ethical way. People need to know the extent of your participation is completing a survey. There's no anticipated risk. There's no pain expected as a result of completing this survey. Is completely harmless and innocuous, but that's not always the case. But nonetheless, not from completing, that's always the case with a survey, but in other types of research, that's not always the case. But the guideline is that regardless of whether it's a survey or people are drinking blue liquid from a bottle or taking a pill or whatever it is that the research entails, that there's always that informed consent where participants are told what to expect, what this is about. And there's some short answer questions, questions 7, 8, 9, and 19. Those you will complete using the survey link that I provided, but also provide those short answer responses on Blackboard. And after you complete it, the survey, you're not going to be able to go back and see your responses. So once you type them, copy and paste them into a Microsoft Word document. The questions about that? So that's going to be fun doing that, and certainly very relevant, and something that you could talk about.
Professor, this is on November 11th, you said?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Now, we're going to go to Blackboard, but not just yet. Let's stay on this. Why is this the next slide? Let me see something here. Okay, well, there we go. This is set up this way to make it easy for you to process. This is very straightforward. What I'm asking you to do is read through the case, and you'll see that there's a number of exhibits. There's a variety of different tables, like in Exhibit 1. What I want you to do is look at that exhibit, and in your report, list all the beverage segments. List all the beverage segments. Like, for example, without even looking at the case study, for example, what are some of the beverage segments? Alcohol, water, carbonated soft drinks, coffee, tea, right? So in the exhibit, you're going to see a variety of different beverage segments. I want you to mention that for this first question, which says, what is the list? What is give a list of all the beverage segments from that exhibit, and explain that in words, right? So you should say, according to the Cola Wars case study, there are 7 beverage segments, and they are, and then just bullet point them. The second question is, there's information in that exhibit about the gallons that are consumed, right? Which segment? Is it carbonated soft drinks? Is it alcohol? Is it beer, wine, or liquor? Is it bottled water? Which segment is the largest in terms of the percentage of gallons consumed? That's what's in that exhibit. It shows a variety of different segments, beverage segments, and it indicates in percentage of gallons the amount consumed for each of those beverage segments. What I want you to do is to indicate in your report, what is the largest segment and what is the smallest segment? What is the smallest percentage of gallons consumed? What segment is that? This information is in the case, and it's in Exhibit 1. Another aspect that we could consider from looking at that exhibit is to determine the change. So you probably heard me say a number of times that, you know, it's not always just about whether or not your brand awareness is 15% or 55% or 95%. If your level of brand awareness is 95%, that's certainly quite enviable. But if it's 15%, and in some categories, that actually represents a multi-billion-dollar business. But if it's 15%, it's not that we're not interested in tracking that. If our brand has 15% market share, then one of the things we certainly want to look at is the change over time. What is the delta? What is the change over time? So, okay, 15% is not as high as 55%. What is it what will it be in a year from now, in 2 years from now? So look at this exhibit, right? This is exhibit 1, and indicate in each of those segments whether or not consumption is increasing or decreasing. Because that's important. That's important. So what I'm trying to do is to get you, so you look at this exhibit, and there's some things that you might automatically recognize. With these questions, I'm trying to draw your attention to, you look at this exhibit and what are the key takeaways? So you see the different percentages. One of the things I want you to get in the habit of doing is looking at the change over time. That's something that's important. That's something that in business that we do. It's not just the absolute value. 5 million gallons. Okay, that might seem like a lot to some. It might not. But if it's 5 million gallons this year, then we would want to know, well, how many gallons was it last year? So that's exhibit 1. Exhibit 2 talks about market share. So imagine you're a consultant and you're doing this analysis. You're doing this analysis of this of these outputs, right? These statistical outputs. So for market share, which company has the largest market share? Which company has the largest market share in terms of the unit case volume, and what percentage share does the company have? So the first part of that is, what company has the largest market share? And then what percentage is that? What percentage market share does that company have? In 2022, right? So I've included some very recent market share data. The Coca-Cola company had a market share in the US of 46.3%. Is that higher or lower than what is indicated in the case study? So again, change over time. So look at the market share data that was presented in the case, and then compare it with this current market share data for Coca-Cola in the US and also for Pepsi. How has it changed over time? So remember, anytime you're looking at a chart, for example, a table, one of the things that we're continually evaluating is the change over time. When you look at annual sales, right? In some of the classes this semester, we were looking at annual sales. What would the annual revenue? Well, what I asked the executives in the course to do is to identify the annual sales over a 5-year period. So when you look at an annual report for a company, they always show at least 5 years of annual revenue. Because why? Why do they show that? Why do they show 5 years of annual revenue? what is it that they expect somebody who's looking at that bar chart of annual revenue for the last 5 years? What is it that they expect somebody is looking for?
That you're looking for growth?
Yes. So you heard what Chase said. We're looking to see if there's been growth. What was the change over time? So we're looking at 5 years worth of data. So when we look over, one of the things that we want to do to establish or identify a trend, for example, is, and we do time series analysis, is look at the change over time. So what Chase is saying, they gave us a bar chart and it shows the annual revenue for 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. And what we're looking at is whether or not there's been a growth. Has there been an increase in sales over that 5-year period? And so that's something that you should always look for. Any type of output that has, whether it's in a table or a chart, is to make a point of comparison. In fact, when we look at financials, whether it's in the annual report or internal financial summaries that are shared throughout an organization, we always look at this period compared to the same period last year. We're always making that comparison. In the month of October, what were our sales for 2023 and what were our sales in 2022? Because we have a target. So we have three metrics that we track. For example, with sales, we have the actual, we have the forecast, and we have the target. The target is what we said before the year began. Our sales were going to be in October. So we said our sales in October were going to be $50 million. Then in the next column, we're going to show the actual. Was it 50 million? Was it 53 million? Was it 42 million? And then what we're forecasting sales to be in the future, even one period ahead, 1 month ahead, 1 quarter ahead, based on information that that we get. So things happen. You might be selling products at a particular retailer. Well, what about when they go out of business? So that wasn't something maybe that we had anticipated happening before the year began. So again, we're constantly making comparisons, and market share in of itself is important, because remember I said, if we're selling 50,000 cartons of orange juice in a given period, that might actually be a lot, and we might have a very profitable business. But remember, once I tell you that in that period, the total number of cartons of orange juice that were sold were 500,000, that means we've sold 10% of all the cartons of orange juice during that period. So we don't look at our performance as a company introspectively only, but externally as well. How are we doing relative to the competition? So we have 10% share. Another company has 34% share. Oh, oh, right? That makes a difference. Although our 50,000 cartons for that period might still be providing us with a profitable business, right? So we're looking at market share here, and I gave you the current information. Look at in Exhibit 2, which company has a smaller market share and what is that percentage? And indicate which brands are seeing an increase in their share and which are showing a decrease. Which has the largest market share? And what 3 brands have the largest market share? And the reason I asked that, and the reason why I asked what is their combined market share, is because what I want you to think about is what is the level of concentration. So in some industries, there's 112 companies competing against each other, and they all have 1% or less market share. Well, that's known as a fragmented industry. But in other industries, the top 3, for example, control a significant percentage of the market share, like what we see here, right? Once we get beyond Coca-Cola and their master brands, because the Coca-Cola company is the corporate brand, and then they have a variety of master brands, including what? Coke, Diet Coke, Sprite. Those are all examples of their master brands. And PepsiCo, of course, has Pepsi and Sierra Mist, and they also own other beverage brands, including Tropicana, right? Tropicana orange juice, Aquafina, bottled water. So if we just quickly look at the statistics I provided you there, more than 70% of the market share is coming from these 2 beverage companies. That's a highly concentrated industry. Think about wireless communication. You have AT&T, you have Verizon, and then you have to start to pause and actually think, right? Verizon, and then Sprint, T-Mobile, and then after that, it gets really blurry, right? And my point is that wireless communication is also an example of an industry that's highly concentrated. The largest wireless provider is AT&T. They have more subscribers than any of the others. They have more subscribers than Verizon. And that's why when the iPhone was introduced, they got an exclusive. And they were the only wireless carrier that was able to sell the iPhone. So that's what those questions about question 8 and question 9, why I'm asking that. Which 3 brands have the largest market share, and what is their combined share? Because I want us to think about the level of concentration, because that's an indication of market attractiveness. Questions about that? Okay. So again, these exhibits, they're in the case. I'm giving you these questions to help guide you and to draw your attention and to get you to think about what is important in those exhibits. So instead of just saying, analyze that table, okay, you would say, thanks a lot, coach. Well, you're welcome. But I'm not asking you to just look at those charts and say, what looks interesting here? There are certain things that are not only interesting, but important for us to look at. And so I want you to get that practice, that experience in drawing your attention to things that are important. Okay. Now, here's this question that is also in your case, right? That's part of the discussion board. That's a discussion amongst ourselves, and we're all going to share opinions and perspectives about this topic. But then for your report, I want you to give that a little bit more thought, and you can use some, look for some articles that talk about this, and of course, provide in-text citations to flesh this out in more detail. Again, your opinion is still the same, but then you could say, and in addition, in the Beverage World March 2020 issue, Nelson Jones indicates that right? So you could do this. So you're going to get a chance to talk about this with all the executives and myself, and then you're going to have a chance to synthesize all of that. But most likely, what I'm expecting you're going to do is to refer to some articles that are written about this topic. And finally, as it relates to this issue, what actions do you recommend? So what do you think a company like PepsiCo or the Coca-Cola company should do? Should they stop selling soft drinks that have sugar? Or is what they've done so far enough? And what I'm suggesting there is they're aware of this concern, and so they have versions of their products that have no sugar, that are sugar-free. You can mention that. They should continue selling a sugar-free alternative. Maybe there's something else that you want to recommend. Maybe you think that, no, they should just stop selling beverages with high amounts of sugar. You know, a 20-ounce bottle of Pepsi has 69 grams of sugar. That's actually a lot. So should they sell Pepsi with 50% less sugar? Because they have a sugar-free version. But think about, what would you do? Because there's a lot of activism around this issue, because they feel in part that children are amongst the most vulnerable. So kids in junior high school, for example, you know, they leave their house in the morning with $3, and when they get out of school, they buy a bottle of soda and a bag of chips. Not that any of us have ever done that, right? But the concern is that they're being influenced, that they're vulnerable. So think about that as well. So not just about yourself. Okay, I could decide for myself that I won't drink, you know, Pepsi or Coke, and I'll only drink bottled water. That's okay. You could mention that, but you also need to think about other age groups, because that's absolutely part of the issue. It's not just about the obesity and diabetes. Part of the cause de célèbre is it's childhood obesity and diabetes. So give that some thought. This is part of your report. And again, for this section, you could find some articles to support your perspective. Now, there's another component. This is also has to do with ethics. So imagine that you're a consultant and you're dealing with this issue. What is the issue? So an executive at Pepsi comes to you and says, you're not going to believe this, but somebody from Coke approached me and they said that they have access to the Coke marketing plan and they're willing to sell it to Pepsi, right? Unofficially, right? So this executive at Coke is telling this executive at Pepsi that they're unofficially willing to sell the Coke marketing plan for $25 million. And in addition, they said that they're a highly trusted executive at Coke and that they actually have access to the vault and the bottling equipment, so they could also get the formula and marketing documents without anybody at the Coca-Cola company knowing. So what do you think about that? What I want you to do is to provide your opinion about that. It's not a research assignment. What do you think? What do you think? Somebody tell me now what you think. Is that okay? So an executive from Coke has on their desk the marketing plan for Coke. And they say, you know, I can't believe I'm sitting here and I'm watching, Coach B's videos on YouTube. And on my desk is the marketing plan for Coke. I could sell this to somebody. I could sell this to somebody at Pepsi for probably $25 million. What do you think? Is that okay? I mean, what would you do? So there's differences of opinion as to whether or not that is ethical and whether or not that's legal. Although in terms of legal or illegal, I think most of us agree that you can't sell something you don't own, although that might be subject to interpretation, right? But you're an employee at the Coca-Cola company. The marketing plan, the formula for Coke is the property of the Coca-Cola company. But you might have some differences of opinion there. So I want you to talk about that. Explain your point of view. And as the consultant, what is your recommendation? What are you going to tell the Pepsi executive and PepsiCo to do? What should they do? Should they reach out to the board of directors of the Coca-Cola company? Should they reach out to the president of the company? Should they reach out to the chairman of the Coca-Cola company? Should they call the FBI? Should they call the NYPD? Should they call Coach B? What is your recommendation?
Call Coach B.
It's probably a good idea. Probably a really good idea. And then I want you to wrap up your report by including a SWOT analysis for Pepsi and also for Coke. You're not going to write the SWOT analysis yourself. There's many websites that have that. I'm going to show you on Blackboard now some sources for this information. And then address the strategic focus for these two companies. What is the mission? What is the vision and the values that you could easily find on the company website? So if there's no questions at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share our Blackboard screen. okay? And this is what we talked about primarily during our last meeting. And I could quickly scroll through these while the recording is continuing. So for those who were not maybe here last time, and this we talked about. So let me go to our Blackboard. Let's see if we can get the technology to work. All right, here we go. Let's see. So can you see Blackboard on the screen now?
No.
Let's see. Anybody else?
Yes,
And now,
Professor.
No. And now we see it.
You see it? Okay.
Yeah, I see Blackboard.
yeah, I
Okay.
can see it.
All right. So this is module 2. So this is for our course. You see there, Business 7279, Applied Business Research. On the left panel is module 2. You click there, and then once you do that, inside module 2, you'll see these 2 folders, lesson C and lesson D, and then these facts about PepsiCo and Coca-Cola. So for lesson C, inside here is the discussion board link and the link for the beverage questionnaire. So this is the link. The first link there is the discussion board link, and you click on that and you post your thoughts. Remember, this is not a research assignment, right? Just your thoughts. Tell us what you think. And other executives are going to say what they think. And I'm going to comment and share some remarks about what you posted and ask you to think about some other aspects. So what we're trying to do is simulate a discussion. This I find actually very interesting, discussion boards, because, you know, if we're in the classroom on campus, sometimes what happens is that only a few of the executives will share their thoughts, and the rest don't speak up. What I find so interesting, so intriguing, is that for discussion board, everybody shares their perspective. And many of those that are silent in a classroom experience on campus are now sharing their thoughts, and they're very insightful and they're very well thought. So that's the purpose of this discussion board, for us to.
People are sharing their thoughts because we got graded on it.
Thank you for sharing that. So this is something interesting for you to work on, and it's certainly relevant to our case, right? To our case about the cola wars, right? Okay, so that's the link. Try to make your first post by this weekend, right? It's not going to take you a long time to do, right? It's not intended to take a long time, and it shouldn't. This is sharing your opinion. And then, you know, reflect upon what others have posted. What did Dafina say about this topic? And comment on her post, or ask her a thoughtful question, for example, about what she posted or why she thinks that, right? To say, I agree, is not enough of a post, right? You could start off and say, well, I agree with what Dafina said, and then, you know, say why. Say, yeah, actually, what Dafina pointed out is something I really didn't think about it that way, but etc. And then the other folder has the link to the survey. And there's a variety of questions, and they use a variety of different scales. And some of the questions are the same. Some of the statements are the same, right? Measuring the level of agreement, but some use an ordinal scale and some use an interval scale. So I want you to experience addressing and sharing your level of agreement using two different scales. And I want you to think about how that impacted your response. Whether selecting a 5 as strongly agree was the same as selecting a 10 as strongly agree, or did you select a 9 instead? So the scale that's used has an impact on the results. So researchers give a lot of thought to that. What scale they use. Last time we talked about some of the limitations of a nominal scale. There are some nominal scale questions in this survey because we said, well, there are times when a nominal scale is okay to use. That we're not measuring the level of intensity. We're not measuring the level of agreement. If we ask, for example, somebody, if they were born in the United States, well, why would we need to give them a choice between strongly agree, agree, undecided, disagree, and strongly disagree? It's pretty straightforward, except for some very, very, very unusual situation. We would know if you were born in the United States or not. There are questions about a variety of different demographics. That's best practices in research. Because remember, what we're trying to do is identify segments. We would want to do cluster analysis to identify segments that have similar needs and wants, or similar behaviors, or similar consumption rates. And then, while that's interesting, we want to take action. So we need to know if you're going to want to try to get those that 27% that are light users of orange juice, that only drink orange juice once a month. We need to know, what is their age? What is their ethnicity? What is their race? What is their religion? What is their occupation? What is their education level? Now, do we need to know all of those things? No, but the more we know about them, the better. Why? Because the more we know about who they are that only drink orange juice once a month, the better we'll be able to reach them, because certain generational cohorts engage in certain activities. They, like, for example, social media. So if we find out that those who drink orange juice only once per month are between the ages of 55 and 75, well, that's not the social media is not the primary way to access them. Because we know that a significant percentage of social media users across multiple social media platforms are 35 or younger. Now, there are some that are older than 35. That's true. But remember, when we advertise, when we want to communicate, we want to not have waste. We want to minimize the amount of waste. What's the waste? You're trying to reach a certain ethnicity, but you're also reaching people that are of a different ethnicity, who are unlikely to buy your product. So that's the reason why those questions are asked. Some questions, any individual could have a sensitivity to any particular question. Some don't want to share their age. You know, I'm talking, we're doing this in an academic setting, but when you do it a commercial setting, right? When you're doing this for Pepsi, right? If we were doing this for Pepsi, you'll see some for some whatever. It's okay. Some just don't want to share their age. Some don't want to share their household income. Some might not want to share their religion. But some of the questions they'll definitely answer. And so based on the questions that are answered, we have enough to make some generalizations about who it is that only drinks orange juice once a month. And maybe if we graded them, like Dafina is implying, maybe we graded them on how much orange juice they drank, like with discussion boards, they would drink more orange juice, right? They would participate more and drink more orange juice. But my hypothesis is that if you drank more orange juice, you would participate more. But that's just my hypothesis. Let's see. Okay.
Coach, we have a question regarding the surveys.
Right.
It says there that you want us to write on a Word document the answers for 7, sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, 7, 8, 9, and 19. Right.
But my question is, do you want us to print the survey too, or just submit the survey answers?
Just the survey answers for those questions. So you complete all the questions using the survey link, right? And you submit that. But before you do, copy and paste into a Word document the responses to 7, 8, and 9, which asks, what are your favorite brands of beverage, for example, and
Why you chose those beverages.
right. That's right.
Okay.
So, but answer all the questions using the link that I provided. But for the short answer questions like that, post that also to Blackboard.
Okay.
But you don't need to submit the survey. You don't need to get other people to submit this, copy the survey, complete the survey. You don't need to send it to the group chat and ask people to complete it. Just you complete it, right? Because I want you to get practice and experience completing the survey, and also seeing how how a questionnaire is effectively designed, because there's you'll start to see there's questionnaires that are created by companies, and sometimes the questions are leading, sometimes the questions are loaded, sometimes their questions are double-barreled. That's not best practices. And so why does anybody care? Well, the company cares because then they're not getting the best information. They're not getting accurate data as a result of the research. So then
Professor, I have a question. Which one do you use for the case study? To use the case study to answer the question? Is it lesson D?
So for the case study is in lesson D, right?
So we'll use the case study to pretty much answer those questions basically.
Right. So the answers to those questions are in the case study. This is also in lesson D is where you'll see the link. Well, you'll see the folder that will have the link for the exam, right? So you could click on this. These are the exam instructions, and a couple of minutes before the exam, you'll see the link, right? But the folder, right, is already there. That's where you're gonna find it. And then this is the folder for the Cold Wars case study. And these are the questions that we were just talking about.
Hello. What about the questions from last week? Where are they?
There, I posted the video for that, and that's in
Okay.
the video lecture
All right.
link.
So you also attached the questions, or we just have to write
I
it
didn't
out?
attach the questions yet, but the slideshow, the slide deck, I haven't posted that yet. But what I did
Okay.
post is the YouTube link.
Okay, thank you.
Coach B, so I'm looking at assignment C and the discussion board and questionnaire link, it's not available yet. Like I click on beverage ethics discussion, click here. And here's where the discussion board would be, correct?
Yeah,
Okay, so that would be available, and this is based on the
it's not
case study.
available now. So this is what I clicked on. Let me see.
No, I don't have that on my end.
Let's see.
I don't know if anyone else is on Blackboard. I don't. 1 second.
Okay, I'll check on it. Okay, I'm
So-
glad that you checked. Let me
I don't
troubleshoot
apologize.
after.
It's there. Sorry, I didn't. Usually
that's okay.
a link there that I can click on.
It's
Okay.
okay. No, you check and see, and let me know if
No,
you're-
it's there. It's there right now. I just scrolled down after your introduction. Click here. It's on the bottom.
Okay. All right, so here's some other things. This is, so lesson D is where the exam can be found, right? This is the folder for the Cola Wars case study. And let me show you something else here. These are some short videos. They're very short. You'll find them interesting about how Coca-Cola is made, what it's like when they're bottling, what is the bottling process for Coke products. One of the things I want to mention is that in general, bottling equipment is much less expensive than the equipment to manufacture other types of products, in particular, more industrial type products. And that's one of the reasons why Coke doesn't generally ship millions of cases of Coke around the world. What they do instead is they set up bottling operations in local markets, because overall it's more cost effective to do that. Some manufacturing operations, it's cost billions of dollars to set up manufacturing operations. And that's why sometimes I've heard executives say, the Coke in one country or another tastes different than the Coke in a different country. And there's two reasons why that is. One of the reasons is the Coca-Cola company, they do change the formula to meet the taste preferences of the local market. So some markets, they know they prefer a sweeter beverage, a sweeter soft drink, and so they make it sweeter. But another reason is, since it's bottled in the local market, it uses local water, and water tastes different in different places. Even in different parts of the United States, the water doesn't consistently taste the same. In fact, it even tastes very different depending where you are in the United States. In New York, we've been known to have some of the best water, but a water in down south, many have expressed concerns. There's what's called soft water and hard water, and you have to run the water through a treatment process so that the hard water is made soft. But then once it's made soft, it's soft. It's like so slippery, and like it feels like sometimes like the soap is not washing off because the water is what they call soft. But that's why the beverage, why Coke will taste different in different parts of the world. Partly that's by design, and partly because of the water that's being used. Now, what I've posted here is some documents that I gathered there are more current documents, but this is what I posted for you now, is these documents about Pepsi and also about PepsiCo and about Coca-Cola. Look through these. I might update them, but you could easily find, you could see here, there's an investor recap for every year, right? You could find the most current one. This is a SWOT analysis for PepsiCo. You can use this one, right? You could find others, but you can use this one. Don't be like, can you see it on the screen there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you could use this. Don't be like, well, that's the one that coach showed us in class. I can't use that. Yes, yeah, yes, you can. You can use that one. That's why I provided it. I keep talking about information literacy, the ability, and that's one of the learning goals for every course in the School of Business. One of the learning goals, right, is information literacy, the ability to find and use information. There is so much information available on the internet, more than ever before. I mean, they say like the knowledge of the entire human race is on the internet. So what I'm continually trying to give you practice and experience doing is finding information. So it's very common now for executives to do what's known as desktop research, which is what I'm asking you to do. Go to the internet, find a SWOT analysis, review the annual report, identify the strategic focus, the mission, the vision, the values, right? Look, the only issue with this type of secondary research is the credibility, right? So and that's why I say the in-text citation is so important, because this we're doing to create a project, an impressive project that you could have part of your portfolio. It illustrates your ability to find information, to analyze information and data, and you need to provide the in-text citation. And you'll have a very compelling project in your portfolio. This is a low stakes thing. And by that, I mean, we're not making multi-billion-dollar decisions based on the information that we've gathered. So what we find here is acceptable for our project. Now, if you're doing this in a commercial setting, or if you're doing this at work, this is a starting point. But everybody is, when you share this information, everybody is going to ask, who is this OJ guy, right? That's the author of this article. What gives this person authority and credibility to write this? It's a very good question. I've seen quite a few of the SWOT analyses and other analyses and information that are on this website. And it's my opinion that generally, I didn't fact check everything, but I'm very familiar with these companies and this industry. And I think it's in large part quite accurate. But again, we're not using this to make multi-billion-dollar decisions. So it's okay. But again, I'm emphasizing the need to have in-text citation. It's not just about plagiarism, academic integrity. Of course, you're in a graduate business program that's AACSB accredited, which is the good housekeeping seal of education. So you have to adhere to those standards. But I'm urging you to keep in mind that it's identifying the source is not just an academic thing. It's also very important in business, because as soon as you start to quote any number or any fact or any statistic, the other executives in the room are going to say, how do you know that it's $86.3 billion? And you could say, my boy OJ from Strategic Management Insight says that. And they're going to be like, well, why would you believe OJ, right? But if you said to the vice president, if you tell the vice president, you say to her that I reviewed the annual report And on page 22, it says that the revenue is $86.3 billion in 2022. Okay, but they'll definitely ask you. And I'm very adamant about that because they would ask me. So I'm telling you, they're going to ask. We looked at a lot of different social media statistics, right? In other courses in which you and we all collaborated. You can't put up those statistics and not think that somebody's going to ask, well, how do you know it's 65% of individuals that are 35 or younger? Right? You have to be able to, you have to have that information on the slide, because if it's not, absolutely, they're going to ask you. You absolutely will be asked. So before they ask you, share that information. So are we clear about that? It's not just about, of course, academic integrity is important. Plagiarism is wrong, but it's not, I'm not asking you to write something on your own. I'm asking you to find information and to synthesize it and summarize it. That is a very important skill to be able to have and to develop and to demonstrate, because there is so much information out there. Even if you paraphrase, you still need to have an in-text citation. I know you say, well, no, I didn't copy it word for word, coach. I would never do that. Okay, but even if you don't, it's okay to use direct quotes, but even if you don't and you paraphrase, you still must have an in-text citation. You're still paraphrasing somebody else's words, somebody else's research, like from this website or anybody's website or the annual report, for example. So it's important that you really get into the habit of doing that. Now, there's also on this other website, right? So I want you to get experience accessing these types of resources. There are a lot of resources like this. Now, nobody would expect you really, and you know, I've probably said this many times, I'm not asking you to write a SWOT analysis from scratch. If you have a SWOT analysis and you have 36 bullet points and you don't have an in-text citation for each paragraph, then what you're telling the reader is that you wrote it. Now, the reason why that would be surprising to me as your coach is, I didn't ask you to write it. I didn't ask you to write one from scratch. What I did is ask you to find some and synthesize them, right? Summarize them. If you want to focus on one, that's okay. But there's certainly a lot of other websites that have SWOT analyses for Pepsi. And so you'll see that there's the matrix, the 4-box matrix, but then there's also a discussion. So those are discussion points. So what does it mean? It's that, you know, on in the 4-box matrix, it'll say, you know, four words, right? There'll be a series of very short bullet points. But what I'm scrolling through with you here is a little bit more detail about the things that are included in that 4-box matrix. And this is what we call a 4-box matrix. And so you see these bullet points are very short. It's very compelling to be able to show it on one page. So what the expectation is for an executive is that they'll be able to read this all on one page. But when you're giving the presentation, here it says the strengths are the best global brand. Well, what are the proof points? What are the pillars of support? You can't just say, well, it's the best global brand, or it has a high level of brand awareness. And what supports that? Well, that's what you're going to talk about. There was an analysis that was published by Business Week about the best global brands and the brands with the highest level of brand equity, and you'll discuss that. So you have to have, when you're preparing a presentation, you have to have pillars of support, things that support the point that you're making. So you can't just make these sweeping statements like, powerful brand, best global brand. That's that needs to be explained, right? And they do. They provide some explanation here a little bit. But there's other details. A company this size would have primary research that they conducted. Business Week does studies like this. Interbrand also looks at the value of a particular brand. So not surprisingly, OJ also looked at the Coca-Cola company, prepared a SWOT analysis for them. So you could use this as a source. Again, that's why I'm providing it. In the case, you'll see some of the, when you talk about the different segments, right? In Exhibit 1, Coca-Cola has penetrated many of the beverage segments. They sell carbonated soft drinks, right? Which is soda, right? Bottled water, juice drinks, sports drinks, tea, coffee, right? All of these different beverages.
Professor, I got a question. So the SWOT analysis, all we need to do is pretty much explain the reason why they're saying what the SWOT analysis are, backing up with research, correct?
Yeah, well, that's what's done here. That's what I'm showing you, that this is the SWOT analysis is that 4-box matrix. And then here you have an explanation, right? This provides an explanation for each of the bullet points. That's what all this is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all these, right? Opportunities. What is the first bullet point? And it explains that.
So we have to pretty much explain it in our own words with research and cited basically on why they're saying it, right? With our research.
For this assignment, you don't need to explain it in your own words, right? I don't want you to spend time trying to reword this. I just want you to mostly to get experience accessing these type of resources, being familiar with the type of things that are in a SWOT analysis, right? You could see this is many pages. He also provides citations, right? Because anybody who's looking at this is going to want to know the source, right? And he's provided sources. So again, as an executive, you need to be familiar with resources that are available on the internet. This is not like years and years ago, somebody says, well, write a SWOT analysis, and you would have to write it from scratch. Which is basically, I'm sure that he had the opportunity to look at SWOT analyses for Coca-Cola that others have posted to the internet, but here he's sharing. See, you go to all these different sources and then you put together a SWOT analysis, right? So, and some of it is based on, this type of research. See, I mentioned Interbrand, right? This is their study. Oh, what happened there? Maybe that link is not current. Okay. Send them a comment. All right. So let's see what else we have here. So there's these other resources as well. This is another SWOT analysis for Coca-Cola. So this is a meaningful experience for you, but it's not meant to be difficult. You know, you could learn a lot by doing things that are not difficult, complex, or complicated, right? It doesn't need to be difficult for it to be a meaningful learning experience. So we're in the next 10 days, we're gonna learn a lot, we're gonna accomplish a lot. Next Wednesday is the exam. Last week was the review. This weekend, you're gonna do the discussion board and complete the beverage survey. And then we're, by Tuesday, also try to make your follow-up posts. And then the exam is on Wednesday, and you have the questions for the case study. The primary resource for that assignment is the Harvard case study, right? So you don't need to search to find out, what is the market share. It's in the case. It's in Exhibit 1 or it's in Exhibit 2. So before we go, let's just look through this again. This is the discussion board. And we're going to have a conversation about this online. I'm going to double check the link just in case to make 100% sure that that's working, but it should be. Laura said she checked it again and it looks like it's working, but I'll look at that to make sure. So that's the discussion board. The questionnaire is in the homework C folder, right, which is part of module 2. Then these are the questions for the case. It might look like there's a lot of questions, but the questions are very straightforward. Again, the purpose of these questions is to guide you and help you focus on aspects of the exhibits that are important. And this is the discussion in more depth about beverages with excessive amounts of sugar that can cause childhood obesity and diabetes. For this assignment, find an article or two and supplement what your perspective with what some things are being said about this issue in the popular press, because it's not a new issue, but it is something that's important. And then this is the question about, is it okay to sell to Pepsi the marketing plan and Coke formula? And then then what is your recommendation? And then you have the SWOT analysis for Pepsi and Coke. And then finally, the strategic focus. So for the SWOT analysis, include the summary from the SWOT analysis. You don't copy and paste. There's 10 pages of commentary there by the author, right, of that website. You don't need to include that. You don't need to paraphrase it, right? You don't need to explain in your own words. Just include a summary, right? So there's at least 10 pages that talk about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats. You don't need to copy and paste that into your report. Just highlight some of the key points, right? Each of those websites, they have a summary, right? They provide a summary of the key points. You could just include that. That's just a couple of paragraphs. And then the information about the strategic focus, you could find that on the company website. And that's it for the case study analysis. So that's the primary focus. We're doing the discussion board, the survey, right, for this research class. We're doing the case study analysis and the exam. I think that's going to be a good use of our time. And these are things that we talked about last time. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to update the slides. It's in the video, but I see, based on what Defina was asking, Christina also mentioned this to me, that this slide deck, I didn't post it, but it doesn't have the questions. All right, I'm gonna post that. But in the meantime, you could watch the video. Anything else before we go? Have I told you that you're the best students ever? You're the best students ever. All right, so that's it for now. All right. Reach out to me anytime. Thanks so much.